Welcome to Blending the Family, the podcast. Topics can range from dads hitting rock bottom, daughters watching their parents divorce, or even what is a good wine for couples to have while talking about finances. Here's your host, whose bleeding ulcer bleeds Chicago Cub Blue, Tommy Maloney. Holy cow!
Welcome to another episode of the podcast known as Blending the Family. I am your host, Tommy Maloney. Thank you for listening, downloading, sharing. If I could, I would give you a hug. Yes, I said it. I will give you a hug. On this episode, this is a very honest one-on-one interview with a very good friend of mine, Jeff Allen. And let me tell you about Jeff. Jeff is the founder of the Allen School of Self-Mastery, a private practice family counselor. He's a coach, and I want to emphasize this next word, mentor. He's also a speaker. Jeff specializes in, as far as his practice goes, boys and young men ages 5 to 35. He guides families, boys, and young men step by step to greater connection, clarity of purpose, and true confidence within themselves so they have the best chance of being successful at home, in school, in their future career, and in their future personal relationships, regardless of the challenge they now face. Jeff is just one of my favorite people. And like I said, this is a very honest one-on-one conversation. Yes, you might hear some foul language. Sorry. You still get a hug. We sat outside Jeff's beautiful home in Loveland, Colorado, overlooking the mountains, and you might hear some birds in the background. On this episode, we're going to talk about what Jeff means by why women have scuba gear and men only have a snorkel. The conversation kind of started off where I wrote my recent weekly column for the Good Men Project, where I wrote about how I just don't see men hugging as much as I have seen in the past. What is going on, men? Why are you afraid to hug? Also, Jeff's aha moment comes from when he had to hit the reset button after filing bankruptcy, which led to him in the principal's office. Well, not him. Well, him, but it was due to an incident at school when his son was a kindergartner. The link to Jeff Allen School of Self-Mastery will be in the show notes. If you need me, want to talk to me, converse with me, send me a hug, you can email me at tommy@blendingthefamily.com. That's tommy@blendingthefamily.com. And if I could, I really mean it, I would send you a hug as well. And here we go. The interview, the very honest interview, outside, enjoying the weather with my good friend, Jeff Allen, founder of the Allen School of Self-Mastery. So what do you want to talk about?
I was going to ask you that.
Well, you brought me here. I think one of the first things I want to talk about is, so recently I wrote an article about men's masculinity, and maybe, I don't know, maybe it's the people I hang out with, but you don't have a problem hugging other men. I don't have a problem hugging other men. So it's kind of a twofold question. One, do you see this with your male clients, an issue? And do you see it around with your friends, an issue of it being I don't know what it is, but all of a sudden I've seen it more and more that two men hugging is such a wrong thing.
You see that more and more now?
Yeah.
Wrong to who?
Wrong to them.
Really?
Yeah.
And how do you know that it's wrong to them? Like,
they say it.
They're offended by it?
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
Huh. Like, this is a friend of yours?
These are friends.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
And they're younger.
Okay.
And that's why I'm trying to just wrap my head around this. Is this... Because one of them, and I didn't get the whole details, and this is in your wheelhouse, but it sounded like he wasn't raised with a dad.
Yeah.
And could that be...
Yeah, my initial thoughts are, the analogy, the metaphor that I like to use is that most women, not all women, but many women have what I would call a scuba tank in their ability to dive into the depths of emotions, like the water, like the ocean. They're able to breathe under there and backstroke and, oh, look at the pretty fish and the shells, and don't understand that most men, if they're lucky, have just a snorkel. And if they're not lucky, if they didn't have a father, if they weren't raised around mature, stable adults, especially a mature, stable, modern, masculine man. That was a lot of M's there. They're just sticking their face in the water, and they can't see anything, and they can't breathe, and immediately they pull away. Immediately, it's like life and death danger to them. So that's what that feels like to me. They're probably, they are so uncomfortable with just an absolute minute level of feeling, emotion, opening up, especially to another man. To them, it seems like there's a cultural wrongness to it, is what you're telling me that they're feeling.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, to me, it's a fear. It's a fear of any emotionality.
Well, then, the flip side is that there's another gentleman who, he's an older guy, Vietnam War vet, and he gets really, you touch me, I'm going to punch you. And I really do believe he would.
Sure.
And I don't know, maybe it's just, I know life isn't rainbows and unicorns and things like that, but it's, you're talking about women. Women have no problem. They haven't seen their friend in like 10 minutes and they're hugging again. But guys, it's, I think what has developed is that bro hug. You shake hands, you bring them in.
Where your arms are in between your body.
Exactly, yeah. And, the more I think about it, the more that's still a little defensive.
Yeah.
Because you're not...
Like chest to chest.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But like I said, women have no problem. And it is true that men and women are wired differently. But I don't know if this is like some kind of personal crusade of just going, why do, it's 2017, why do men still have a problem with intimacy and, feelings and, like you were saying, opening up? I'm going to ask, do you see it differently with your young men clients? Or is that the norm, that they're still having struggles opening up?
Great question. I have a client who's 25. He's an addict. As a matter of fact, he came on with me only about 6 months ago. And 3 months in, 3 months ago, he fell off the wagon. Mm-hmm. And he'd been sober for 3 years, which was interesting timing, right?
Yeah.
Like, he knew that he needed help. He'd been going to AA on and off sporadically. So to jump to it, when we first got together, he tells me all these things about his father and about how his father was living vicariously through him. And
was he an athlete?
No, he wasn't an athlete. Actually, most of his teenage years he was drunk.
Oh.
And in and out of rehab and or juvie, and got in many accidents that should have killed him but didn't. And so, to answer that question, his teenage years were just turmoil. He was a straight A kid until 13 years old, and then something, according to him is what he would say, some kind of switch flipped, and the doctors would say his bipolar kicked in.
Okay.
From when puberty happened and that kind of timing, and just lost total purpose in his life, and he was looking for significance and recognition through, drinking, stealing a car, going out driving when he's 14. So back to your question. Interesting timing that he fell off the wagon, while he was working with me. If I look back, I think that he probably knew that was coming.
Mm-hmm.
There wasn't growth in his life and in his job. He had, like a minimum wage kind of fast food job.
Mm.
And again, like I said, wasn't going to meetings. Knew he should be working through the steps, but wasn't. He was getting caught in steps of forgiveness, forgiving those that have wronged him in the past. And he really held a lot of resentment against his father. So I'm happy to talk about where I've come with him. Now he and I hug when we're done with our session, which he's a young man. We meet in a coffee shop with a lot of college kids. And when we first got together, though, it was, he could barely shake my hand. And he told me he had a lot of resentment against men. And mostly his father, it's interesting, his father basically was codependent with his son. Like, enabled him, didn't uphold any kind of real rules or boundaries with him, bailed him out. This is the son's story too.
Okay.
Bailed him out of everything that he got himself into, and didn't have to fight his way out, if you will. Didn't have to struggle or face the challenge of what he had created. And it's interesting, of course, why he, blames, quote unquote, his father for all of his place in life, which is part of our work together, of course. But it only took about 4 or 5 sessions, and I'm on a full circle to what you asked. 4 or 5 sessions for him to be like, okay, hugging me.
Mm-hmm.
And about the second session, I think it was the second session, I said, hey, I'm a hugger, so are you cool? Like, and I got the one shoulder totally turned away awkward hug, and I did the one arm appropriate hug, and that was fine. That was great. And it got a little bit better and better, and now it's a handshake when we see each other and a hug after our 90-minute session. And he's really opened up a lot to me. He's told me things that he's probably never told anyone. Mm-hmm. I mean, things that, deep-seated shame. And to circle back, now that he knows that I'm a safe person, he knows that I'm a safe man, he's opened up to me, he's shared these things with me. I've held that space for him without judgment. Mm-hmm. Now he's great to hug me at the end of the session. So back to the Vietnam vet, I'm sure there was trauma in his life around physicality and closeness. Probably many, many different relationships that have caused him to truly feel in danger. Whether it's physical danger or he's going to be perceived, perceived to, I don't know, be homosexual or whatever his fears are. But so young people, no, I wouldn't say that it's generally young people or any particular person. And the clients that I see, it really relates to their emotional depth, their emotional intelligence, if you will, their ability to go into feelings without, in their perception of losing it. Again, back to the putting their face in the water versus snorkel mask versus mm-hmm. scuba tank. For some men, hugging is like putting their face in the water. Mm-hmm. And it's just that, I can't breathe, this is dangerous, I don't know where this is going to go. In other words, I might open up more than I want to here, or, it could even be more surface level. Who's looking at me, who thinks that I like men sexually, which I think I don't think that's so much the case, really, honestly. Someone's going to think I'm gay. Mm-hmm. I personally don't ever really see that. And I work with a lot of boys and teenagers and young men and middle-aged men and so on. I'm in a men's group, so in the men's group, many of us hug pretty quickly because we share emotional stuff and depth with each other. And I think that's really the crux of it that I've seen, is just truly a fear of, I don't know where this is going to lead, and I'm not familiar with this territory.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Does it matter if that young man has or had a stable home versus the so-called stereotypical broken home? Is it an individual who just doesn't have that intimacy gene, so to speak?
Intimacy gene. We all have, I truly feel we all have, different personalities.
Mm-hmm.
Sure, we're all going to want different engagement. And if we're attached to where's this going, what's the person's motive, we're, I think, less likely to want closeness or intimacy. Is it related to if they had a stable family? I mean, certainly a great question. It's very cultural too, I would expect.
Yeah.
We started talking about New York, and I'd ask how many people are willing to hug after just meeting someone, knowing them for a month, having deep conversations with them. I wonder how different that culture is than here in Colorado. I don't think it's directly related to necessarily a wholesome family, if you will. It's how much self-work have they done, and how well do they know this person? How much have they shared with them?
Because I look back, my own relationship with my dad, and I think the best gift several gifts he really gave me was, number one, the ability to just talk to people. The running joke among my dad's friends is they call him the mayor of Michigan Avenue. In Chicago, there's the Magnificent Mile, which is on Michigan Avenue, and my dad could walk up that street and know at least 10, 15 people.
Yeah.
And he's, it depends on the relationship he has with that person, but for the most part, I see a lot of hugging. Mm. And that's the other gift he gave me, is that it's okay. Being divorced men, one of the things I want to, it's like bookends. When I pick up my son and when I drop him off, there's a hug.
Yeah.
Because I want that, because that's what I got from my dad.
Yeah.
And I guess, I don't know, want more of that, just because, right now, I'm not a political person, Jeff, but there's so much unstableness and a lot of hatred, and I don't know, I just want to give the world one big hug right now and just go, it's going to be okay. Yeah. It's going to be okay. I find you very fascinating because here you are. If somebody said to you right now, Jeff, tell me what you do, or what job title, what would you say?
My job title is a coach and counselor, specializing in working with boys and men. And that's what I say. That's what I say, level 0, on the street.
But take it a few notches back. You worked in the banking industry, is that right?
Yeah, back in my 20s. So both of my parents are successful, retired with their pensions, corporate professionals. 35 years at IBM, 10 years at Mayo Clinic, and then 25 years at IBM, retired. That kind of situation. So that's what you do. You go into the corporate world, mm-hmm. right? So got my degree, went into corporate restaurants, ran restaurants for about 3-4 years, did really well, was a traveling franchise opener for 2 different restaurants, and then was a GM for a particular restaurant. Did not like that culture or the hours. And
definitely the hours.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
And so it's, what do I do? Oh, the real estate market's booming. just so happens, it's funny. So, Tommy, I've been divorced twice. I'm not sure if you know, which took a long time for me to say, just as a matter of fact. You know, it's the shame that comes up of, like, wow, you know, it's that guy, right? Been divorced twice.
Well, if you look at Ross from Friends, you know.
Right. I don't want to go for 3.
No.
Yeah. So my first wife I married my college girlfriend. We were together for 1.5 years in college, got married right out of college, and then 6 months later, you know, we're fighting every day. I truly think that dynamics change once a couple is married, at least for people, which I was one of these, that hadn't done their work on themselves, really understand themselves, to understand what does it mean to be in an adult relationship.
Right.
So fighting every day, it was sort of reminded me of my grandparents, actually. And I said that to my first wife, that, you know, I'm not going to live like that. I'm not going to live like this. And basically 6 months later, I came back from one of these openings, and I'll never forget, I was in the doorway of the garage, and I put my bags down, and I said, you know, let's start over, let's be friends. And she had conferred with her divorcee friend over the previous 3 weeks while I was gone, and had this sort of manifesto demand list of things that Jeff needs to do to fix our marriage. And it didn't go well. And I slept in the guest room and didn't come back. And we never came back together after that. But anyway, so I tell that story because we had just bought a house. And she said, all right, I'm out of here. Good luck with the house. And the real estate market was booming. What the hell am I going to do with this house?
Right.
You know, I can't cover this all by myself. And so I found a real estate investor in town who did a lease option with me, and we signed a future purchase contract for 2 years out. Gave me money to move out in the middle of the month, and filled it by the end of that month with tenants. You know, rent higher than the cost of my mortgage.
Right.
And then bought it from me 2 years later, covering all the costs of everything. And he sold it to his, you know, clients, his people, for more than that, and made profit all along
This
the way.
had to be prior to 2008.
Yeah, this was 2003, 2004.
Okay.
So that's when, 2004. That's when I saw that, and I was like, what? Like, holy shit, this is amazing.
Yeah.
And looking at my GM job, going home at 2 a.m. and getting yelled at if I ran out of food, you know, that kind of thing. Like, screw this. So I worked as a mortgage broker for him on the side for a little while. And of course, everything was booming, so it took no time to land clients and start making, you know, a couple $3,000 per loan.
Right.
And then started investing in my own real estate, and eventually made my way into a banking position downtown Denver on 16th Street Mall. You know, 20th floor corporate banking position, and worked that position for about 2.5 years. Got promoted twice within there.
Corner office?
Not a corner office.
Okay.
Not yet. I was in a cubicle.
Oh, I'm sorry.
So to circle back to your question, so I was a corporate professional, a businessman, and a banker all through my 20s. And have you ever had that feeling when you get a promotion or get a job, and for like 2 seconds you're like, yes, I got it. And then you sit down under the hum of the fucking fluorescent lights and want to like strangle yourself with a telephone cord. So that was me in my cubicle, especially after my second promotion within the 2.5 years I was there. It's like, all right, oh my God, this is the same life.
Yeah.
It's not a different life. 2008, 2006 and 2007, by then I owned 8 properties, including my own. And, you know, everything started tanking 2007, 2008, and I was able to sell and get out of 2 of the properties before the bottom fell out of all of my exit strategies. Mm-hmm. And had to hit reset and declared bankruptcy on all my property. I mean, I had $4 million or so in property. I was up about $500,000 on paper. And then within 18 months, you know, all the tenants moved out, all the bottom fell out. I was way... leveraged, and had to hit reset. So all during that stress, I had an acute, what I thought was a stroke, an acute, like, nervous panic attack, if you will, one particular day. Yeah, I'll never forget that day. I had my suit pants on and no shirt yet, and took a call from a client, and a particular loan, a huge deal was falling through that was basically like 2 months worth of income.
Right.
And I started to get a migraine, which I'd only had about a half a dozen since middle school. I took migraine medicine and laid down, and the next thing I knew, paramedics were over me. And I couldn't move, and there was a bunch of them in there. I don't remember how many, but there was, probably like 4 guys in there, and asking me questions, and I couldn't answer. And I remember them, putting me into the ambulance, and the one guy in there with me, putting an IV in my arm. I could just tell he was doing something, and asking me questions like my name and who's the president and those kind of questions. And I could only get out one syllable, like that, and then everything washed out of my mind. And I wasn't able to say anything more. I had basically forgotten what he had asked. I knew what he had asked. I knew he'd asked me a question, but I didn't know what he had asked, and I couldn't say anything, and I couldn't move. And I remember, tears just like streaming down the sides of my face as I lay on the gurney, thinking like, holy shit. And so it took me some time to get out of that business, but then 2008 happened. Personally, everything, was in front of the magistrate, hitting reset on $2.2 million in loans, and it's like, this is not the life that I want. And said, fuck it, and took the cash that I had left and moved to Mexico the winter of 2008 you can go for up to 6 months just on a travel visa. You don't have to have any other particular visa. So I went for, 175 days or whatever it was, and came back and did some just like super easy pickup, like sales job at the farmer's market, and just just living,
right,
and happy with what I was doing at the moment. And then my son went into kindergarten in 2009, and my story there goes, in the first 2 weeks, he was in the principal's office 3 times. And the third one was for hitting the music teacher when she asked him to move, and he didn't move. So she put her hands on him to, facilitate him moving, and he turned and he hit her. Now, I'd been coaching his t-ball. He'd been in preschool for years, summer camps, like nothing ever like that had ever happened. Sure, there was like some anger, and he saw, so this is part of my story, is I was a really stressed out guy and dad, until he was 5, through all that. And so,
But that was during your banking time, right?
Yeah, he was born in 2004, and I went into kindergarten in 2009. So I was really, like I would say, unconscious, and had not done any of my own work, brought my stress home, was really unhappy with my, existential place in life. Even though on paper it was great, and then it was not great.
Right.
Through all that, it wasn't fulfilling. It wasn't significant. And so, yeah, I wasn't a very good dad, from when he was born till he was 5. And a lot of that started coming out in the form of power conflicts with teachers, sort of ignoring authority. I'm going to do my own thing. And that's what was coming out in the first 2 weeks of kindergarten. And I really didn't like the principal. They weren't giving us any kind of options. It was a lot of blame. There was no solutions being offered. It was like, look at your kid. He's crawling around on the floor. What is he doing? Well, yeah, we've been in here for 30 minutes, and you're talking shit about him like the whole time. He's checked out now. Mm-hmm. That was my thought, and flashing back to 2009, sitting across from the principal, like, oh my God, really? So I had the chance to pull him. So I pulled him and I homeschooled him. That turned into 3 years of homeschooling him. Me diving head first, both feet, into child psychology, human psychology, self-improvement, on, and did everything I needed to do to homeschool him. And since 2009, I've now been in education, counseling. I got my special education license, got my foot in the door at a middle school here locally, and literally changed diapers for the first half of a year for $11 an hour to get my foot in the door. Like, that's how passionate I am about what I do. And it was a Wayne Dyer and or Jack Canfield book that said, if there was no money in the world, and what would you do? What would you feel most called to do and significant? And I need to figure this out with what's going on with my son. And I had gone through similar stuff, but, the world was different 30 years ago or 25, whatever years ago. And, yeah, man, so it's been this journey of online school, hundreds of hours of study, observations on and on. Got the special education position I wanted as a resource teacher, had a caseload of 30 kids and their families. Plus, I was head of my department on the crisis prevention team and, emergency response team. So all the highest flyers in the school came across my desk or in committee, or I worked literally one-on-one with those kids, gang kids, kids that weren't identified special education but had terrible home stuff going on like you were asking about earlier. And I love it. I love it. One of my superpowers is my ability to relate to kids and meet them at that level. And the way I would relate it, it's not like a hug, like you come up and give them a hug. They don't have as many layers of shield up in their life yet. They'll look at you and feel your energy and your body language and then ask a couple questions, and by then they kind of figured you out most of the time. And I
think they're like dogs.
Yeah.
Because dogs sense if you're a good person or not. I think kids have that superpower, is that they can tell you if you're BS or not.
Yeah. I think they can feel ulterior motives, for sure. And some people might refute that and say there's bad people in the world that have that, figured out. But one of my superpowers is to relate to kids. And it's really the child within us is what I've defined it as. So your question earlier, what do you do? My superpower is to relate to the child within us, that scared child that doesn't understand what's going on. I went through a lot of yelling in my household. My son saw tons of stress. He then had a tremendous amount of judgment all through school, and had his own personal challenges as well. And I understand our primal motivations. It's, what are we afraid of, or what do we love? What do we want to move toward? Do we have significance in our life? Are we having growth in our life right now? Or are we just doing something for the paycheck? Are we just doing something to appease our parents or appease someone else in our life?
It's funny that you about the appeasement, because somebody had posted on Facebook, oh gosh, I can't think of his name, but he's in Game of Thrones, had this great speech. It was from the website Goalcast, and it's one of those websites. You look at one quote unquote motivational speech, then you look at another one. Then you're just getting pumped up.
Yeah.
And there was this one from the singer producer will.i.am. He was talking about his mom. His mom said to him, "You have to get a job." And he goes, "I have a job." And this was back when he was, in music, in bands. And they weren't getting paid, or getting paid very little. And that was his superpower. That was his why. Is that I know something's going to happen. It might not be today, it might not be tomorrow. Something's going to happen. And I always, Brian Tracy, I'm going to screw up his quote, but, if you believe something great is going to happen today, believe it. And I think that was his intention, will.i.am, was that I'm not getting paid to be doing these so-called concerts, but I know that sooner or later something's going to break through. And that just that personally changed my little life, is that, I tell people, for example, well, what do you do? I said, well, I do freelance writing. Sure, a lot of it is free, hence freelance, the podcast. But this is, I don't like to call it my job, because you can get fired from your job, but this is my work. This is my passion.
Yeah.
Is sitting here with you, Jeff, or or whoever and writing about whatever. And the question I want to pose to you is, obviously you went through all those trials and tribulations to get you where you are today. I'm sure that your banking experience and that day of looking up at EMTs going, what is going on? But that was, you needed that. You needed that moment. Just like your son kind of, I don't know if it was something dormant in him, but he needed those moments of that issue with the music teacher. And I look at, we don't always see our why, but it comes at us, and we have to accept those moments. You know, I believe there's no coincidences in life.
I agree, yeah.
And all your steps going from filing bankruptcy to today, without those things, I don't think you'd be doing what you were called to do.
Oh, certainly not. Yeah, I agree with that. Yeah, we definitely... we can only see the hill that we're charging right now. We cannot see the hills past that. Something I want to add on to what you said of, I know this is going to break. I know I'm going to be big. What do we do with that, right? And for me, the key is we tell people. We share this with people. We cannot keep it to ourselves. And the more that we tell people, the more instances come up that assist that, and then the more we believe it, and the more they believe it, and on and on and on, and the snowball starts. So, you know, yeah, I mean, I was the kid that was good at math and science, and if you told me I'd be teaching English to special education kids, or that I'd have 8 houses prior to that and, you know, declare bankruptcy and foreclosure on those, or live in Mexico for 4 different winters, or now be a private practice counselor with a thriving practice,
right,
or be the president of my Rotary right now. I mean, I could keep going. Like, I wouldn't have believed any of that. I wouldn't have believed any of that stuff. And as kids, children's brains cannot fathom that there are these mountains, these hills ahead of us, and we can't see past this hill. And that's okay, but what happens when we're an adult? And we don't want to fathom that there's hills behind this hill because, shit, the one I'm on right now is so fucking hard.
Right.
Or, you know, there was just this storm and a mudslide, and now I'm back at the bottom of it again. What do we do about it? We talk to people. Like, we connect with people. That's what I'm a little bit fearful of, very fearful of in our current culture, is the lack of, like, sitting down like this, like we are. You know, it's great to be over Skype or Zoom, that kind of thing. I mean, I feel horrible when I get on Facebook for more than 10 minutes at a time. I don't know about you. I mean, it's like...
You know, it's... I was telling one of my daughters the other day, she was taking a selfie, and I had just read something that... something about the difference between humans and animals is that animals aren't narcissistic. They don't have that. And yeah, and maybe I'm wrong on this. And this is where, you know, this whole social marketing thing, and that you have to be on these social platforms.
Right.
And I don't like being on Facebook. I love Instagram. I love pictures. I love sharing pictures of things that our kids are doing. It's not that I hate Facebook. It's something that, you know, as business owners, it's a necessary evil to help promote what you're doing. You're speaking here. You've got a new book out here, or what have you. And I agree. After it will suck you in.
Yeah.
And after, 15, 20 minutes, you're going, what have I just done? Nothing. I've just watched another stupid cat video or something like that. And I agree. I think that we need more one-on-one connections, or even a two-on-one connection of, building a sense, building a community, and building, a unity. And I look at our kids. Our kids are roughly around the same age, and I don't know if I'm excited for their future or nervous about their future. And, this is probably more of in your area, in your space of, again, because you work with young men, of, do they have goals? Are they writing goals down? Are they, saying to themselves, well, a quick example, before I got here, I was listening to NPR, and they just did a story of the police academy in Nashville and how they're trying to get more African-American youth to understand not just what the police go through, but how you can become a police officer. And, a lot of these kids, their lives were suddenly changed going, I could do that. One kid said, because they brought out the police horse, and the kid said, well, I'm black. I can't ride a horse. Well, something ingrained said to him as a youth, horse, I'm black, no. But he realized that he can ride a horse and he can hang out with a horse. And I'm, again, just scared that, some of the people we've watched and listened to, like Wayne Dyer, Zig Ziglar, even Tony Robbins, these great motivators and these great speakers, I don't know, maybe we're missing those people to help us and it could be blinders, but to help motivate us and show that, even Brian Tracy talks about, just write down your goals as you've already achieved them. I am going to be a great speaker and make $10 million in 1 year, or what have you. As dads, are we writing down our own goals? Are we showing our kids? I tell the story these days. God bless my son. He was mowing our yard, front and back, and got to the backyard, and the mower died because it was out of gas. Went to go get gas, poured it in, and then realized he had poured the gas where the oil goes. And I blame myself because I didn't teach him the difference between putting gas in the gas part and oil in the oil part. And, my wife is more mechanically inclined than I am. She changes headlights on our cars. She fixes all the appliances. But that's where, as a man, you're kind of hurt going, I didn't teach my son that. Now I started thinking about, okay, he's 14. He's going to be driving in, a year and a half. I need to show him on a car how to change a flat tire, where the oil goes in a car. How do you disconnect battery cables? How do you, these are things, I don't know, I guess I've taken for granted. Especially when I'm getting a phone call going, I just put gasoline where the oil goes. And I'm in panic mode because I have no idea what to do.
Sure.
But I think it goes back to, as men, are we teaching these? Or are we letting somebody else teach them or not teach them?
Yeah, we need to ask ourselves the question of, what do I think a good dad looks like, talks like, acts like, in my own opinion? And if in my opinion a good dad teaches his son, where the gas goes, and I haven't done that, then I need to take a look at what's going on with me. In my example, when my son was 3 and I was giving him a bath, he wasn't really listening to me. He was playing. I was super stressed about something at work. and I turned and put my elbow through the bathroom door out of pure just rage and ridiculous frustration.
Mm-hmm.
And if there's anything I could take back in my life, it would be that moment of my 3-year-old seeing Dad, so enraged that he put his elbow through the door. And I'm sure he thought it was his fault.
Yeah.
And what kind of dad am I to do that? So that's one of my pinnacle examples of I wasn't being a good dad in that moment.
I remember, for me, my pinnacle moment was right after my divorce. And that, when you get married, you think, this is it, one and done. And so your kid wants to play with you, but you're like, I'm too tired, we'll play tomorrow, we'll play later. And taking that time for granted was my pinnacle moment, going, oh my gosh, I don't live in the same household anymore. I'm not going to be able to see him on a daily basis. I'm not a good dad. But I think we need those moments to realize, okay, we screwed up.
Yeah.
How not necessarily how can we make up that, but how can we be better?
Yeah, those moments help us understand what we don't want. We need to know what we don't want before we can figure out what we do want.
Right.
And so what you're asking, there's 3 facets of what I really believe of in any relationship and growth and significance. It's one-on-one mentorship,
Mm-hmm.
whether that's with our father and son or with its other men, group support of some kind, and a strategy or a book or advice. And are we letting our kids be raised by our technology? Sometimes I think that we are. It's an easy babysitter, right? And we need to ask ourselves, is that the kind of father I want to be? And then it's also part of our culture now, which we need to understand. You and I grew up with Nintendo and Sega and all that stuff. They're growing up with different tools.
Yeah.
How are they using those tools? And are they turning them off sometime? Are we taking them into the woods? What are we doing with them that's really going to grow them into contributing, stable, mature men? And to full circle, are we asking them to talk about emotion, put their face in the water a little bit and realize they're not going to drown? Metaphorically handing them a snorkel mask and say, hey, let's go snorkel together, because I do this too. And then eventually it strengthens our ability, and we eventually have that scuba tank. And women, I just think, have practiced more throughout their lives of being in the quote-unquote water and putting their face in the water and swimming. And so it's not that they're, I don't think, necessarily better. Some women are not, certainly. It's what models have they seen? What groups have they been around? Has anyone asked them to go into the water with them, And so that's what I think we need to do as men and fathers, is to put our own face in the water, figure that out, and then ask our son to do the same. And it's okay. We're not going to die. It's okay to hug. It's okay to hug before you go to school. I do the same thing with my son as bookends as well. And, like we've all heard and know, it starts with us. Once we figure out what we don't want, then, okay, let's course correct, turn toward what we do want, tackle the hill that's right in front of us, knowing that there's going to be another hill on the other side of that, and there always will be. That's the journey of life, is that it is a journey, not a destination, is so cliche. Enjoying the climb, then enjoying the peak, and enjoying the next climb is what's really brought me to peace in my life.
Thank you for listening to Blending the Family. Oh, yeah, and we hope you'll come back next time. Please. No, really, please.